Okay, I think we're ready.
Okay.
So let's begin our February meeting, Public Health and Safety. And Bob Weisford can't be with us, but he'll be with us next time. This is our new meeting time for now, and then I think in April we're moving to 8 a.m. Friday. So we'll try this out and make sure it works. I'm hoping that our fire chief can also come occasionally at least.
Yeah,
Because
I think,
the evening meetings I know were difficult for the chief, so.
yeah, I know that, I did receive a message from Bill Henderson that he was hoping to attend in person this morning, but had a work conflict come up. He may try to join in via Zoom.
Okay.
He definitely expressed an interest in coming to these meetings now that they're Friday nights.
Okay, great. Okay, well let's start with the minutes. Are there any changes? Bob took our minutes last time, and he could do that again in March. Are you doing minutes?
Oh, sure.
Do you mind?
No, how do you, when I do mine, I do it right
From the agenda?
from the agenda and then I save it and just give it to,
Yeah, Cindy, if you go to, it's a similar kind of structure to the F&A packet. So if you work your way to like public safety council and then committees, public safety, agendas.
I have the agenda, it's not letting me save though.
Oh, that's the PDF version of it. You go back to that folder and let's see here, really. I almost forget why your computer does this, like one position, all the documents. All right, I'll email you real quick.
Okay.
All right, then scroll down. Sorry. Get that right there. I don't think that's it. No, that's not. Okay. I'll email you the Word version. Sorry about that.
Oh, wait, here it is. Hold on, I see it. It was just hidden.
All right, great.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, well, this will save us some grief if we can get it sorted.
Yeah, no, I'm ready.
You're good now?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so the first thing we need to do is approve the minutes from January. So we could go ahead and approve those. Are there any changes you wanted to see? Or? Okay, so we'll approve the January 2022 minutes. And then we would go next to our chief for the status of command.
Thank you, Rob. So, good morning, everybody. Everybody on Zoom. I'm certainly glad to be here, as always. This is our status of command report for meeting number 2 on Friday, the 4th of February at 9 a.m. We do have some highlighted information to go over here, which is kind of new, that I wanted to bring everybody up to speed, and then the next month in March, it'll probably lessen in terms of highlights. So the one thing I wanted to move right into was personnel. Obviously, everybody knows we're authorized at 6. We're currently at 6 for sworn employees, 1 chief, 1 sergeant, 4 officers, 3 non-sworn employees. One of them, as the most important update, is the parking controller vacancy. So right now, just to let the Public Health and Safety Committee know, we have all the applicants. The application phase closed at 4 p.m. last Friday on the 28th of January. And we have 13 applicants for the job. And at least 2 of those interviews are scheduled for today. So we are moving right along, and we're hoping to have the information by the 16th, which I think the 16th or 17th? 17th, which is our next meeting of council. So we're moving along, and I want to thank Samantha for all our assistance with this. We worked on the job description together, and in addition to that, we mapped out the time frame. And we have some really, really good applicants. Without going into detail, I can tell you that all of them, in their own way, after paging through these resumes, which are all in here, are qualified in many different areas and many different ways. So So that's the latest update, and we'll have more updates to come. As we move down, obviously everybody knows because of the situation with the parking controller vehicle is not currently in use. It is basically stagnant. We're going to replace that with an electric Bolt vehicle. That is approved in our budget. The only car that we're having a problem with right now is 3697 Ford Crown Victoria. But again, it appears that, based on Samantha's help, that's going to be replaced. So we're very helpful because it looks like that may need a new transmission, and we don't necessarily want to commit to that. Yeah, so that's just a little update on the fleet. That just came up recently since our last meeting. So I just wanted to give everybody an update. Considering our Municipal Police Officer Education and Training Commission certifications, they're annually required. The 2022 emergency vehicle operations, which are not part of MPO, they are scheduled right now in progress. So right now that scheduling is not finalized, but is in progress. The 2022 firearms training is all officers are scheduled, so everything is mapped out already. The 2022 municipal police officer training for Montgomery County Community College for 2 separate days, which this time includes legal updates and implicit bias training. That is already scheduled, and 2 officers have successfully completed already. 3 are currently in schedule. And for first aid, CPR, and AED, we have 1 officer completed and 4 are currently scheduled. So I'm just going to jump down on the page, and that covers the sergeant and all the officers. I'm going to jump down to the chief's training. So the Municipal Police Officer Education and Training Commission requirements for the chief and the commanders, as offered for police chiefs and commanders by the Philadelphia Police Academy, is already scheduled for first aid, CPR, as well as legal updates, implicit bias, and sexual harassment and juvenile trauma training are all scheduled for May, which is basically mapped out throughout February and March, and 1 day in April. So that's the latest that we have. That is the first quarter of our training for this year. So each, as March 30th passes by, we'll have an update for the additional quarter, the second quarter, because we are taking advantage of training that is being offered at no cost to us from Delaware Valley Trust. And that's the one thing I wanted to jump back into. That training is now confirmed. That has been scheduled by Carol Bigham at Delaware Valley Trust. The first one to go will be Officer Kelly Lynn for dealing with the mentally ill subject. That's next Thursday. And then the duty to intervene is Officer McCabe. That is going to be on the 24th of this month. And then fair and impartial policing, Officer Dutton is going to lead the charge on that. That is going to be on the 4th of March. And use of force, Officer Belfi is going to be there on March the 11th. And cybersecurity awareness is with Sergeant Vernaccio on the 24th of March. That will conclude our first quarter training. And then again, we're going to move into our second quarter. In addition to that, Sergeant Vernaccio is scheduled for supervisory training in April at the Penn State Justice and Safety Institute for POSIT training, which is basically police first line supervision training. And I am also pleased to announce that the probationary status for Sergeant Vernaccio is concluded, effective February the 3rd, which was yesterday. And he's successful. He is getting a performance evaluation, and he will be granted permanent civil service status at that rank. He's done a tremendous job, and I'm going to share that information with the committee at our next meeting. So you're going to be able to review that report and what it entails. That's pretty much it there. The one thing I did want to jump back to is our Lower Merion coverage has dropped dramatically this month by 79 hours versus that of December. So we've dropped significantly, going from about 224 back to 145. And we anticipate even less going into February and March. So those numbers are coming back online, just to let everybody know. The last thing I wanted to discuss, which I think is very important for everybody to know. So for this year, for the Public Health and Safety Committee, for your awareness, we started a pilot program with traffic enforcement initiatives back in October. It was our teeth cutting ceremony, and we wanted to see how it went. We're concentrating on basically rush hour times, whether it's in the morning or in the afternoon. But we're trying to capture rush hour times. We're overlapping a little bit of overtime so officers join together for officer safety, and they go out there and they enforce obviously the traffic laws as much as they possibly can. It's basically a 2-day initiative during the rush hour, and it's a 3-hour window on each day. And I'll give you an example. The first one that we had for this year, our maiden voyage, was on January 21st, which was a Friday, and January 22nd, which is a Saturday. So during that time, Sergeant Fernaccio and Officer Belfi overlapped with each other. In addition to other personnel, we went out there. The overtime that we used for it was very minimal, but it ended up reaping great results. So we ended up investigating 12 vehicles for violations of the traffic code in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we documented 23 different violations, and that was in a span of 6 hours between 2 days. So it was very successful, it was outstanding, and we are going to be doing this each month because traffic safety is a huge concern for our department. And the one thing that I really see in terms of performance for these officers, now that I'm going to be completing year 4 in May, which is a short time away. The real performance measures, our bread and butter, are a couple areas. Number one is foot patrols. We do more foot patrols than I think than just about any other police department, if not the county, probably even the state. We do foot patrols, and that's why our crime is low. So we average anywhere from I would say about maybe 150 to 200 foot patrols each month. That is outstanding numbers considering what I'm benchmarking with other police departments. That is a measure of performance activity for the officers, as well as traffic enforcement. So those are things that we have to keep hitting. Those are cylinders that we have to hit all the time. So I'm pleased to say that because of their efforts on the 21st and the 22nd, the results have been great. And I'm hoping that the results continue that way throughout the rest of the year. And it really sends a message to the community and others that, if you come through the borough and you're cutting through on North Linwood Avenue, or you're cutting through on Haverford Avenue, or Montgomery Avenue, we're going to take those offenses seriously. You have to slow down in our community. The posted speed limit obviously is 25 miles an hour, and we take that extremely seriously. Myself and the mayor constantly have this conversation about the professionalism during car stops, but making sure that people understand that you must slow down in our community to keep our residents and our business owners and visitors safe. So that's the thing that we constantly strive for. And that's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions about the information I presented, I'll be glad to respond.
Yeah, okay, thank you, John. I just wanted to ask about the Crown Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say that needs to be repaired or being replaced?
We're probably going to replace that one because we have a lot of money in the budget to do that on a lease. And in addition to that, the Ford Crown Victoria appears right now to need a transmission. That Ford Crown Victoria is the oldest vehicle that we have. It's a 2010. So right now it's going on, almost 13 years old. So considering when it was manufactured, it has low mileage. It's a good car, but unfortunately the transmission is going to be, it may be cost prohibitive to actually go after that, considering some of the changes that we're going to make.
And that will be electric as well?
No, for the police car, the parking patroller vehicle will be electric.
So that was my question, is what's the time frame, is there some time to at least look into the possibility? Because I know the technology is changing kind of daily.
It is changing.
You know this, better than me, but I'm seeing that there are some kind of hybrid options at least, some hybrid SUV police options.
Oh, absolutely. There's an EcoBoost option for the police that went down from an 8-cylinder to a 6-cylinder. It's very fuel efficient. As a matter of fact, we hear a lot of good reports. It seems like the two brands right now in policing across the country that are being really used are Dodge and Ford. That seems to be a mainstay. It seems like they're getting away a little bit from Tahoe, from Chevys, as it's just too cumbersome. And also too, Ford Expedition, they're getting away from that because that's cumbersome. Right now, if you look at Lower Merion, they're downsizing from Ford Expedition back down into a Ford Explorer.
Yeah, they just announced Lower Merion. I saw Gilda, I believe, posted that they are strategically investing in EV, public works, and policing as well. And I know we have a lot to get to, so I don't have this conversation now, but I know actually in one of the civil service interview questions was speeding through Narberth and policing policy of, it's not safe to speed for police in our little small borough. And one of the questions was like, you would call for backup because you wouldn't go do 100 through borough property. So perhaps I say this because perhaps given the policing policy and the pursuit policy, we may not need a car that, has the ability to do 120 miles per hour. Like that, that given given our policy and the proximity of the neighborhood, could we do an electric vehicle because it mirrors the safety policy of our police?
Also, too, we wouldn't allow a pursuit to go through because of the public safety anyway.
Exactly,
regardless of
so
the-
why do we need we don't need a
It
Tesla?
would be terminated, that pursuit would
Right.
be terminated. If there's another solvability factor on that vehicle, whether a tag or another unique identifier, that pursuit will be terminated. We're not going to endanger public safety
Correct.
to speed, to just catch someone. First off, you can't even have a policy that's going to allow pursuit for traffic violations.
Right, so I say that just because we don't need a Tesla because our policing pursuit policy doesn't allow it.
Mhm.
So perhaps, again, we're kind of unique where we can compare in other municipalities because of that policy, that perhaps an electric vehicle would make sense and mirror the pursuit policy.
They do have one in Lower Merion. There is one in Lower Merion. It's a Ford Fusion.
Mm. Oh, a sedan.
Yeah, it's a sedan.
Yeah, I don't know if that, yeah, I
Yeah,
have to
it's
check,
Ford Fusion.
fact check.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, if you could please, I'm definitely open to learning more about that, Cindy, if you could please send me whatever, all you've heard about, like, what Lower Merion is
Okay.
doing with that.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little bit confused by this conversation though, because I felt like when all of council talked about the budget late last year, I felt like we had a pretty robust discussion around the subject of electric versus gas-powered vehicles for police and public works, and that we arrived at the conclusion that the borough would not purchase any gas-powered vehicles going forward, but that we would be amenable to short-term leases on gas-powered vehicles while the technology comes around. And that's why the 2022 budget does have funding in it, which council approved, to lease 2 police vehicles this year. But I'm happy, and I'm sure the chief will be happy. I mean, any information about electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles that could be of use to the police to take a look at. But, I felt that council had kind of decided this subject for this year already.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. Yeah, I'd forgotten about the lease versus the buying. And so, but yeah, maybe it's something we can look into, because I don't know, maybe there's a cost benefit. I'd just like to be aware of the options, on the sustainability side, and I know it's constantly changing, so I don't know the latest, yeah.
Now, we're going to go for fuel-efficient vehicles anyway. That's our goal, is to go to save fuel as much as we possibly can.
Maybe what we could do, and maybe Chief and I could talk about later, is that maybe we could prepare for public health and safety before we pull the trigger on the lease, like what vehicles we looked at and, what the pros and cons were, and then a recommendation as what we want to go with. And then we can bring it to PHS and then, have you all do a once-over before we actually sign a lease.
Yeah, I would appreciate that, if we could wait that 1 month before signing the lease.
Yeah.
I would appreciate that chance to review.
I'm gonna forward.
I guess the only question I would defer to the chief is with the transmission situation on the Ford Victoria, is that timing okay for you if we just take a month to evaluate our options and present it to PHS in early March?
Right now, we're somewhat, I would say we're just keeping our head above the surface with the vehicles, and I'll give you an example. Right now, we have 2 operational vehicles, the Dodge Charger, which is a 2014, and the Ford SUV, which is an Explorer. But even the Ford SUV right now needs a new catalytic converter that's got to be repaired at the Ford dealership out in Springfield, somewhere on Westchester Pike, which is where we go. Marple, I think it's Marple Ford. So we have to go out there and get that done, and that is not on a recall. That way, we actually checked that out already. That is going to come as an expense to the borough. So we have to get that vehicle repaired anyway, and then we're down. The unmarked vehicle, to make sure that the officers have an auxiliary vehicle, has been left here. So I have not even been using that. I just went back into it recently after the Charger came back, because we had to do a couple things with the Charger and the SUV, so now I'm back to using it, but for about a month it was parked outside, just to give the officers an auxiliary vehicle in case one of the other 2 went down, and we had more than 1 officer working. So because of the virus, we're not necessarily too crazy about joining officers up in the same car. So we want to keep them as separate, we want to keep them separate as much as possible. So if we look at that, I would say that's fine, but we may have to, I mean, we could talk about it further about the cost and to actually fix the Crown Victoria offline if you want to discuss that, Samantha. You know?
Yeah, why don't we offline, we can talk about that transmission would cost, if that's what you need just to get us through until we can get a final decision on the vehicle lease.
Okay, okay.
And maybe I'll just ask the members of public health and safety, given what the chief has shared, if once we give you that information, if we can make a decision sooner than later, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, oh yeah, we can definitely do that. I mean, even if it's, you know, our next meeting is what, March 2nd?
Yeah,
So potentially, even if at our next council meeting,
Yeah.
since that comes sooner.
yeah, that would be great, yeah, if as early as the March 2nd PHS meeting, yeah, if we could have that sorted out, that'd be great, thank you.
Okay, so next, so any other questions on this before we go?
No.
Okay, so let's go to traffic concerns. So we have the Narberth Avenue Bridge and the Sabine Avenue data.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. So this is our first real test go using the, at least since my time being here, using the traffic monitoring equipment now that it's actually up and running. And looking at the data for it, I feel like we need to talk to the manufacturer about how to position it, because it captured a lot of vehicle data. And while I don't doubt that there's a certain number of cars potentially going the wrong way on Sabine Ave, I certainly don't think it's 200 per day. So the two theories that Jeff Eldon and I have about this is, one theory is that it was potentially capturing traffic going both ways on 201 Sabine. The other theory that we have, looking at the placement of it by the stairs there to the park and how the elevation it was at, is that maybe it was capturing vehicles in the parking lot of 201 Sabine. And I'm actually especially maybe inclined to think that because the average vehicle speed was only 12 miles per hour. Even factoring in the fact that vehicles would be coming and going from the parking lot at 201 Sabine there, that still seems like a really low speed to me and a lot of traffic volume. So I'm going to talk to the manufacturer about advice on placement, but I don't think, again, it was our first go around with it, and I just don't think the placement of the device was in the correct sort of way to capture the speed and volume data that we need to address the concerns we received. So I would like to do that, basically talk to the manufacturer, get it repositioned, because I know it is supposed to be able to capture traffic going each way, because literally in our system, we have two devices. One is labeled eastbound and the other is labeled westbound. So I think we can get this figured out. I just need to talk to the manufacturer, readjust it, and then come back with better data.
Okay. Okay, so we would just wait another month to, to look at this. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate to do that to the residents.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that we have actual data to work with when making these decisions.
Yeah, accurate data.
Yeah.
To your point. And I don't want to, this is not a conversation for now, but just to kind of provide some context on the question that I asked before. One of the things that motivated me to run for council was the traffic issues on Iona Avenue and asking for the traffic report, the traffic study, where we did none of it, right? And then another study to say, yeah, you should have done the first study, can we have $6,000? One of the things that came out of those reports that were 15 years old was that there was no reason for some of the roads that were one way versus not. So historically there wasn't a comprehensive plan of why something was one way. So I'd asked before, is there a traffic engineer study that says that portion of Sabine should be one way? So I guess that is my first question. And the second is, we have multiple roads that are one way, including Narberth Ave, particularly when that bridge is open, people go the wrong way all the time. Observationally, I see multiple people go the wrong way there. And I think back to Matt West and his saying, we actually need a sign diet. The more signs that we throw up, the more immune we become to that. And I think that we should consider that built environment kind of budget line and approach, which I do want to share in a minute, to traffic calming in things like narrowing entrances with curb cutouts and planners as a traffic tool, not just a stormwater tool, that may be more effective than signs. So I'm wondering if we can kind of think comprehensively about that. And to the point of 25, John, I think you'll agree with this. This came out during these studies too. 25 feels incredibly fast in our little town. And then if we had the ability to knock it down to 15, which we don't,
Right, okay.
which we don't, it would be easier. 25 on Haverford Ave feels like 50. So oftentimes when people say they came flying through, it absolutely feels like that, but they're likely going the speed limit. So tools, because we can't actually lower the speed limit, tools like planners, cutouts, and not just more signs. In these reports, at least, perhaps they're antiquated because they were a decade ago. So these are actually some of the best tools we have, and I'm wondering if it's helpful to get Eric involved in this conversation as well, for both Sabine and larger.
Yeah, so if I may, I absolutely agree with everything you're saying with that. I've always been somewhat anti-sign because I feel like signs are helpful, but only to a certain extent, and yeah, the more you have, the less valuable they become. And agreed, I read a book, unfortunately it's the most generic name ever, like 10 years ago I read a book that's titled Traffic, and it talks about exactly how the infrastructure affects the vehicle speeds. And yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And actually at Public Health and Safety, I think right before you joined, Cindy, was it our January meeting or our December meeting? We were going to have, there's Bill Henderson. Thank you, Cindy. Sorry. We were going to have Eric, we had put in a request to Eric and Mike Schneider, our traffic engineer, about doing the comprehensive plan talks about doing the traffic circulation audit. And Eric and Mike were a little unclear about what the scope of that project should be. And I think we had Eric at our meeting last month with the intent to talk about that, and we ended up, we had a lot of other things on the agenda to get to. But yeah, I think a lot of that makes sense, and I'd love to have, and we did want to, and I would love to try again to have that conversation with Eric.
Yeah, and I think that this has actually been the counterflow bike lane has, for me at least, kind of anecdotally, while I have some concerns about the bike lane, it slowed my personal driving down because it was narrower and I was kind of looking at hay bales. It was a neat kind of little taste pilot for infrastructure and traffic calming.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all agree that we want to pursue those options. I mean, we started to talk about the raised pedestrian walkways, but it would be terrific to have a more, as you say, Cindy, comprehensive, kind of complete streets approach, which is, I feel like what we're working towards. But the truth is, I think what Cindy's pointing to is the work kind of spreads across committees, and I would like to see infrastructure, some of these infrastructure pieces that we normally see as simply infrastructure, I would like us to be able to see those as also public health. And safety, and I'm not exactly sure how to, coordinate the work, but I think it's a great
and I think
way to
that
think about it.
the reason why we put that in that budget line was really to begin to move our thinking in that direction as well, is how we use the built environment for a public health and safety tool.
Great.
Can I just add something here? So in terms of traffic calming, as you're describing, Cindy, Rob, as you're continuing the conversation, I think traffic calming measures are excellent, they're outstanding. I do agree that the 25-mile speed limit in the borough seems to be fast for this community. Can you imagine going 25 miles an hour down North Narberth Avenue towards Haverford Avenue? I think one of the problems is we come off, and what I see all the time is I sit up in green drop, whether in a marked vehicle or an unmarked vehicle, that people just come way too fast off of Montgomery Avenue. They start pouring down Haverford. We know the problems. We know the traps, within the borough. We know the pitfalls within the borough where the speed seems to increase. I talk to many, many residents about traffic safety and traffic concerns. I get most of the complaints generated at me. So I can tell you that I talk to residents constantly. As a matter of fact, there's one resident in the 400 block of Dudley who I've talked to repeatedly for about the past 2 years. I've developed my own close relationship with this resident, you know, in a professional and personal capacity. And I can tell you that not just him and others across the community, but it always comes up about gator razors, speed bumps. And I am a big proponent of speed bumps. I think they work, they're very effective. You need a study to get them. Unfortunately, it's got to coincide with PennDOT. I can tell you that they have been very effective in terms of slowing traffic down in my neighborhood on 25-mile-an-hour zone streets. So it has worked very, very well. That's one thing that I think that we should pursue, because it seems to be very inexpensive in terms of getting that place versus doing all this reconstruction, curb cutouts and things like that. And it's a quick fix. The only problem is you have to worry about snow plowing, things like that. They have to be removed because they can be ripped up, you know, unfortunately by a plow, you know, it can be ripped up. But that's the one thing that I hear repeatedly in the borough from the community. And, you know, and I can tell you that just based on my experience, it seems like they have had a tremendous effect where I live.
And to your point, John, communities figure it out, how to plow and how to do it. I mean, there's lots of examples surrounding municipalities how to. Look, I love speed bumps and people to say, it's a pain in the ass driving through Narberth with all these damn speed bumps and raised pedestrian crosswalks, you got a tree everywhere to turn around. I'm just going to use Lancaster Avenue. I think that'd be a fabulous narrative.
I would definitely agree with all that. My kind of position on paving the roads in the borough, I know there are a lot of, you know, we have the road study, there are a lot of roads, especially in the north side of the borough, that do really need paving. But my position is I'm very reluctant to do any road paving until A, from an infrastructure standpoint, we've identified the sewer and stormwater work that needs to be done. And then B, on top of the road, until we have kind of a complete streets plan, I would love to, as part of paving a road, put in speed bumps or change the curb cuts or put in, you know, additional spots for tree wells or that sort of thing, or bike lanes or what have you. So that's kind of my position. That's part of why we're not paving any roads this year. Is I really want to take this year to get answered. What do we want to do about complete streets? What do we want to do about the, you know, where are the stormwater issues, where are the sewer issues?
Okay, so let's
Rob?
speak about that. And
Rob?
Go ahead, Andrea.
You know, these issues on traffic calming combine both infrastructure and public safety. Does it make any sense to have a combined committee meeting to talk about traffic safety issues?
Yeah, I could imagine that. I guess I would ask Samantha, you know, could you imagine within the next year we get to a point where you've completed some of the sewer studies, you know, and you're kind of working towards a more complete streets
Absolutely.
plan, and maybe if it's just even a few streets, and at that point we could have like a joint committee meeting so that we can be sure all of these concerns are, you know, kind of on the table, like traffic calming, stormwater.
Yeah, I guess what I would love to do is the next step, if I may. I'd love to try again, maybe at our March meeting, to have Eric and Mike here to talk about the traffic circulation on it.
Okay.
And they can work on that in tandem while Public Works works on, you know, identifying the stormwater and sewer issues.
Okay.
So I think those are kind of parallel tracks we could work on, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if there is a case to be made for even the raised pedestrian crosswalk, which are plow friendly, because it is in fact not a speed bump like you're talking about, Tom, but that raised plowed pathway that we had looked into backward in our former, anyway, with former office staff, you know, perhaps even looking at 5A as, I don't want to say a pilot, but it's both a public health and safety tool, but also an economic development, walkability, you know, as we're investing in this outdoor dining and whatnot, those raised pedestrian crosswalks are a really important tool because, to your point, Chief, you can climb down that hill a half hour. I mean, we all know what could horribly go wrong with that, with people going 26. So there's nothing in your police tool discretion that you can't write a ticket for somebody going 25 on the road, but if we have that raised pedestrian crosswalk at those intersections, at least it slows folks down to the densest part of our community before we do a larger borough-wide complete streets. I know that I discussed this. As
Yeah, right.
potential
I could
point.
imagine that. Yeah, I could imagine that. We don't need to wait till we have it all figured out.
Right, yeah.
For the densest section in that 5A, as we continue to encourage outdoor dining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we had our engineer with us, was it a couple meetings back? Or maybe that was an infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And that was infrastructure?
Well, both on our last infrastructure and public health and safety meeting, yeah.
Right, okay. So we could, I guess we could consider that, one of those raised crosswalks for downtown. Maybe I'll talk to Samantha about that, and Fred, and just see which committee's going to work on that.
We'd like to say that every traffic audit, I'm sorry, Samantha, I interrupted you. We'd like to say that every traffic audit that we've done, almost in the past 4 years now, does reflect that for the most part, our borough residents are within compliance. We rarely stop the borough residents. They're very conscientious about our speed within the community and our placement of traffic signs and our obviously our one traffic signal, but they seem to be very conscientious. And I'll give you an example of all the mini audits that we've done on our traffic citations on review. 95% or greater of our traffic offenders are from outside the borough. Most of our offenders reside in wards within Lower Merion Township.
So I'm just looking at our packed agenda and the time we have left. I'm just trying to think. We may need to triage a little bit here. Could we? I know we have Bill Henderson from the fire company. I wonder if we. What do you think, Samantha? Should we do this Narberth Avenue Bridge approach, or is that something that could be handled?
No, I think that just as long as the committee is aware of that, I don't think there's any action yet to be taken on that.
Okay. So maybe we could talk about 4.1 and 4.2. Happy to have Bill Henderson here, Fran Dixon, of course, our fire chief, and I think it's important that we kind of reestablish communication between the committee and the fire department. So, Bill, I'm very happy that you're here, and there are two items we just want to review with you. One is the commercial property fire inspection, and then we'd like to talk with you about the upcoming anniversary of the fire company. So, Samantha, would you like to just update on the
Sure. So
inspection?
Thanks again, Bill, for joining us this morning. We're happy to have you here at any future meetings. So just a quick refresher for anyone in the public who watches this as a recording or anyone here. So the borough is looking into implementing a commercial property fire inspection on a regular basis to help protect public health and safety. It's a pretty common feature of most other municipalities, and I think it'd be great to be able to do it here. So our code enforcement officer, Kevin Walsh, just successfully completed the certifications to be a commercial fire inspector and put together this commercial fire inspection checklist for us to review. And I think that Bill had a chance to look at it as well and had some thoughts and advice to provide to the committee. Bill, if there's anything you'd like to throw in here about your thoughts, we're happy to hear them.
It's just, there's a lot of things we can look at. The one thing, I have a list of things that we could send out to the commercial properties prior to starting this to get them kind of a feel for what we're going to be looking for. Like, make sure the emergency lights work, exits are clear. You have a fire suppression or fire inspected and up to date and that kind of stuff. As I said in my email to you, Samantha,
Bill, just so you know, your connection, you're coming a little bit in and out.
our annual inspection, which is like any newspaper has to be done twice a year. The only schedule to get the grease off the hoods. And there's just some, I have a little list that we could send out just so people are getting, so that they know what we're going to be looking for, so they're not blindsided the first time we come in and do an inspection.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot, Bill. I know one of the issues that me and Kevin and the committee have kind of had some conversation about is how often the fire inspection should happen. And so it sounds like your recommendation as our fire marshal and officer in our fire company is that kitchens should be inspected twice a year and that other commercial properties should be inspected once per year?
They need to be done by like a third-party inspection agency, one that is like a sprinkler company would inspect the sprinkler system, a fire alarm company would inspect the fire alarm system, a kitchen suppression company would do the corresponding kitchen suppression system. That's and that, I mean, I don't know what the plan is for the borough to move forward with the inspection program, but I mean, I think it would be reasonable. And again, I don't know how much what the plan is to do them annually, maybe every other year. Most of the occupancies. I mean, you're not going to if you go into a retail store, your issue is going to be, it's not going to be in the front area usually, like where the sales area. It's going to be in the stock rooms where they're going to have stuff blocked, blocking exits and stuff like that. Doors, rear doors that are supposed to be egress doors may have locks on them. We had a store that's no longer in the borough. I mean, it was a great store. Everyone loved to go there, but it was a nightmare with rear doors being locked because they were worried about losing merchandise. And it's that kind of stuff. It's like, and there's going to be like a learning curve for the businesses because we tried to do it and we got a lot of pushback and I mean, I think the good businesses aren't going to have a problem with it. Some of the ones that have issues are going to be less happy.
Would it be, hi Bill, Cindy.
Hi, Cindy.
If it's helpful, we can talk to Ed Ridgway and see, they are meeting again as an MBA, maybe to do a group meeting and presentation to kick this off.
Yeah, and that would be a great start. I mean, I just don't want anybody to be blindsided by this. It's like, and that's why I'm sending out the pre-inspection. I mean, I've got an Excel spreadsheet that basically has the majority of what I think this inspection program would be looking for. And it has a monthly check. Just, they can go in and initial or, that, okay, we check the emergency lights, they're working. Our fire extinguishers are have been inspected by a fire extinguisher company within a year. I mean, just like little stuff like that, the stuff that they could stay on top of it so they're not blindsided when this program starts. And all of a sudden, a bill like, if you've got a place that I usually get or the borough, and I think the borough gets it now, is from the health department. If they find a kitchen suppression system out of date, the health department, when they do their inspections, they usually notify the authority having jurisdiction. And I had been getting some of them because I knew some of the inspectors from work. But you don't want to have somebody get blindsided who hasn't done it in like 2 years to find that they need a fairly substantial system upgrade to the tune of like $2,500. You don't want you. I mean, I don't think it's the borough's intention to create a hardship on the businesses. I think we're trying to make the businesses safe, and that's an education component of this.
Exactly.
And Bill has such respect in the community. I think rather than just sending out kind of the list, the spreadsheet for you to deliver, Bill, just that the intention is to keep everybody safe. It'd probably go a really long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. So could this be signed by you, Bill, as the fire marshal? So people could.
I think it's to come from the borough. If the borough's implementing the inspection program, I mean, I have no problem working with the first time I saw that, I realized that this was getting started is when Samantha sent the meeting invite for this meeting, and I read through the corresponding paperwork.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I think it's a worthy conversation, and I think it needs to. I mean, I think it's a discussion that we need to have. I said, but I think I would like to sit down, with at least a member or two of the health and public safety committee, just to make sure. I want to make sure that we're going where you want it to go, because ultimately they're not going to complain about the person doing the inspection. They're going to complain to you folks. They're going to complain to council and the mayor.
Yeah. Okay. That's very good. Thank you, Bill. So. And one of us will reach out.
Probably going to take the majority of those complaints too.
Reach out.
If you want, I mean, I think it's such a great idea to connect with Ed.
Sure. I mean, I don't know how you organize PHS. I think last time we did say there was kind of a liaison, but, we
Right.
can discuss that too. But
Right.
yeah, I'm happy to help coordinate, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah. All right. While Bill is here, I think, Bill, you're still with us. Is there anything more by the way, on the inspection that we need to discuss?
No, I think, like I said, if Cindy can reach out to MBA and I can coordinate with Bill and Kevin to make sure we have an inspection that works for everyone, and then we can get a letter out and advertise it.
Okay.
So we'll do that initial conversation and meeting before the letter goes out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Because while Bill is here, I wanted to just discuss the upcoming anniversary of the fire company, the 125th anniversary.
Yeah.
And the council would very much like to support the department, the fire company, in this, in marking this anniversary. So, Bill, we wanted to ask if you have any ideas, or if others in the fire company have started to think about what this might look like, if there's anything that council could do to support.
I'm turning my video back on. Yeah, we've got some things in the works that that not everything's completed. We're going to do a hopefully we'll be able to do a low key banquet this year, which we haven't been able to do for the past 2 years due to the pandemic. So that's one thing that we're and we're going to go not a little. I don't say overboard's not the right thing. It's like we try to keep that as low. I mean, low budget's not the right term, but I think you know what I mean. We're going to give everybody like a little gift, like maybe a like a glass, or I'm working on a challenge coins, which are real big in the emergency services and the military. So we're going to have one of them. Everyone's going to get one of them. Just stuff like that. But then in the fall, we were talking about. Normally, we do our fire prevention open house on a Wednesday night, and we were talking about maybe doing that on a Saturday and having try to make it more of a community day to celebrate the 125th. Just, we had a great turnout for fire prevention. I bet you we had easily, I know it was over 100 people for our fire prevention last October, and hopefully we would love to double, triple that number or more in the fall if we could do something on a Saturday, late morning, midday, do demonstrations and like we do, and really get the community involved. I think we serve the community, and I think I hate to say it, a lot of the community thinks that we're paid, and I'll be waiting. I'm anxiously awaiting for my next paycheck, which will be first for my 42 years.
Well, so Bill, I could imagine a kind of we could invite the mayor, the president of council. We could have a bit of a ceremony to mark the occasion on that Saturday, and I think council would also be open to a resolution.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
To recognize the work.
That would be my pleasure.
Okay, so Bill, if there are any other ideas, please share them with us. We would be happy to support you.
Thank you. And I keep turning my video off because it's easier for me to hear with the phone closer to my ear, and I figure you don't need to be looking at the inside of my ear. So yeah, absolutely, we will share as we get developed. We have a committee developed, and we've been meeting for over a year trying to get some things going. And it's like and every time we meet, somebody comes up with an idea that was better than the last. So we have to start acting on some of the great ideas, and the fall open house, and we need to get that stuff done. So it's like as things progress and we get more information, I will pass the information on to you folks.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
All right. So we have not too much time. Maybe what we could do is move through 4.3 and 4.4. Is there anything else, Samantha, that we kind of have to get to?
Let's see here. I would say for 5.1, I defer to your judgment. Like if we need to push 5.1 off, we can.
Okay.
So yeah, if you want to try and tackle 4.3 and 4.4, that everything else, yeah, can probably wait.
Okay, maybe we can, in the last couple of minutes, touch on 5.1. Well, that might be as far as we get.
That's fair.
Okay. All right, so 4.3, we wanted to have some discussion of the possibility of an advisory commission that would be advisory to this committee. And the idea is simply, to kind of get more ideas and input from the community. And, one possibility is to take the raised sidewalks, for example, that we've been talking about for pedestrian safety. This committee, when it comes to environmental concerns, we're advised by the EAC, and there are many other traffic concerns that are coming to the committee. And the thought is that we have a lot of interest, we have a lot of expertise, a lot of volunteer spirit that we could tap into to create a small committee that could meet maybe quarterly, and it could be charged by this committee. So say for example we have a question. Okay, we really want to do more on traffic calming, but it's kind of a chicken and egg situation with complete streets, and we don't know, which move to make first. We want to coordinate grant applications. There are some folks in the community that I think would be happy to put in some time to kind of look into some of those questions and make a recommendation to this committee. And so I wanted to just share that as an idea. Cindy and I discussed it briefly. And just have some discussion as a committee, see what you think of this concept. And maybe, Cindy, do you want to flesh out the idea?
Sure. So I think it makes sense just organizationally. We have an environmental advisory committee. The second arm to this committee is really, again, public health and safety. And looking at how we're expanding that, that definition beyond just law enforcement, like we just discussed. There's multiple tools to address public health and safety in a community. Police are one very important one, but there's also multiple other tools. We have a community that's really interested in this as well. This is a national conversation. Lots of communities with, unfortunately, really high crime rates, which we are privileged not to have, right? We have a community that has people have access to safe housing, jobs, food, education. We're not a community riddled with gun violence, thankfully. So, for example, the advisory committee set up in Philadelphia has a very different task than an advisory council or a committee would have in our very privileged community. However, I do think that, Rob, to your point, we mirror the organizational structure of the EAC to a policing advisory council as well, and utilize the resources and folks that we have to kind of tie together what we had just discussed. I would recommend really kind of identifying some of those roles. One being from the built environment. For example, I actually just taught Michelle Condo's work in the use of trees and greenscaping as a crime prevention tool. I think that we can utilize folks in our anti-racist committee that are really interested in thinking how we, all of us as public servants, look at policies, procedures, and practices. Representative from the business community to talk about their unique needs. And this is an opportunity to invite some teens, some seniors, and citizens interested in this conversation. The Civil Service Commission are folks that really spend so much time working through the process of hiring an officer, and then their work kind of stops. We can think about how, without conflict, they could continue to be involved. And again, kind of mirror the organizational structure of the EAC, who's been such a valuable resource. Some of the advice we've taken, some are aspirational. That EAC has, at least for me personally as a council member, helped shape my perspective, agenda, opinions, votings on issues, because I've learned so much from that.
Yeah, so that's the idea. It would just be to kind of get more input, because as a committee, we can't do all of the research. So I wanted to see what others think in the committee. I spoke very briefly to the mayor about it, and Andrea's here with us.
Yeah, hi. So I spoke with Rob about it, and I think there's a lot of value in this concept. I kind of thought that if it was set up kind of like the HARB committee, where you have different specialties coming in, it's like the old story of looking at the elephant and everybody's blindfolded and everybody sees a different thing. And everybody comes to problems with their own perspective. So I like the idea of getting different areas of viewpoints for the committee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have a lot of expertise in the community, and people view problems from different perspectives, and I think there's value in collecting the perspectives of a wide variety of folks.
Yeah, and I think it could be very kind of targeted, like I say, it could meet quarterly, and this committee could kind of decide, okay, what are the questions that we have before us that we don't have the time to kind of research and answer, and then we could kind of charge this new advisory committee to do some of the research and make a recommendation. That's the way I would see it.
Sure.
I don't know, Samantha and John, what do you think of that kind of structure?
Sure. So I think what you're talking about makes sense. I think the main concern I would have from a staff kind of consideration is what sort of involvement you would expect from myself and others in terms of participating and supporting that initiative. Because while I think it's a good one, I also want to acknowledge reality. Like just looking at the agenda for this committee, it's tough to get through everything, and myself and the chief prepare materials for all these items. And so I do question, I hate to do this, but I do, because I like to be a doer, not a don'ter, but I just question the capacity of myself and the staff to support, what this would be doing. And I just wanted to see what your expectation would be in terms of what that support would need to be.
Do you go to the EAC meetings?
No.
I don't see why you would go to this then. Do you, Rob?
So yeah, I wouldn't expect.
It's nothing against EAC.
I just was curious,
I wouldn't expect the staff or the chief to attend the meeting, so it wouldn't be additional time that way. But it is a fair consideration. There could be requests for information from whoever the chair of this committee is.
We should probably ask that go through you then first.
Yeah, right. Right, so we could be careful how we set it up, because we don't want it to be an additional burden.
Yeah, I guess I would just say, and I defer to anything else the chief has, is I do like this idea of as long as, for my comfort level, as long as my involvement is primarily through this committee.
Yeah.
Because we're doing that already. I'm not too worried about that as long as we structure it that way, but I'm certainly definitely want to hear any other thoughts the chief has about it.
Yeah.
So my concern overall, obviously one of the biggest challenges that we have in any of these committees is managing the expectations. So it certainly sounds like from what's resonating on the other side is that there's more concern about community involvement, community focal points. So there's other options, there's other mediums that we take advantage of. The Narber Civic Association sets up a meeting annually, meeting with the chief. There's town halls, there's workshops, there's things that we do to get involved with the community that has happened during the course of the past 3.5 to 4 years, which I've gladly participated in. My concern about this committee would be, what is the vision, what is the mission of the committee, and where is it going to go in addition to what this committee does? And also, too, when it comes to advisory committees, they're often set up in a police municipality that is larger, and it's usually based on specific problems. It could be a police corruption problem, it could be an excessive force problem, and it could be an abuse of services, primarily that of overtime. So those are the reasons that commissions and committees like that are usually set up in major cities. Those are issues here that we don't necessarily have, and I want to knock on wood and make sure that it stays that way. That would be my only concern, and also too, in what capacity? Is it truly an advisory capacity? There may be things that they may recommend that the simple fact of the matter is, okay, well, the expertise is on this side of the table in terms of cost-benefit analysis and other factors where we may have to push back and say, listen, that sounds like a great idea, and we want to find out what we can do instead of what we can't do. However, this is a situation that we can't do. So in other words, we want to make sure that there's an understanding and expectation there that we may not be able to do everything that's expected. We may have to push back. In terms of attendance and presence, I can tell you if it's a quarterly thing, it doesn't seem that imposing on me, but I would want to be there, and my concerns about being there would be sincere. Like, in other words, if people in this committee have questions, I want them to have access to me. I want them to be asked me. I want them to be able to ask the sergeant or the officer that may have some expertise in this area. If things are scheduled, there's a certain format or a subject matter that wants to be discussed. It could be training. Kelly Lynn is our training coordinator. It could be something else that may involve, aerobics devices with speeding. I would want Sergeant Fernaccio there. Criminal investigations, I would want Dan Dutton there. These are things I think that they should, as a committee, if it's going to go in that direction, have accessibility each meeting to police representatives, because they may have concerns and inquiries that are going to help them perform better as a committee if they get short, straight answers.
So I'd like to propose, actually Chief Bear and I are presenting on this in Las Vegas in March, is that no, it's not in response to police corruption or retirement or anything like that, but rather a new model of public health and policing that's happened with the understanding that, again, the public are the police are the public, and we both have a lot to learn from one another. And this would not be, again, anything other than advisory and an opportunity to share learning experiences. So unlike a town hall where it's kind of like didactic, this is really a learning community where we're utilizing this expertise. Much like the traffic calming situation we have. Let's put together the business association, a senior citizen, a teenager, the biking community, and say, let's a police officer to come together and say, how can we problem solve this? Let's bring it to council. And much like the EAC, a lot of the things we do, a lot of things we don't, for all the reasons why we just said we can't. But there's a tremendous amount of learning in that conversation, in that process. And that really is the mirror organization. It's not a watchdog group, but rather a learning environment where there's collaboration, understanding police can learn from the community and the community can learn from the police.
Yeah, we know that we're in a really strong position now. And so I think the vision could be, okay, what could be the next step, in terms of public health,
21st century.
for this community. The work that Officer Dutton did, and I believe it was also Officer Lynn, in saving the life of one of our residents.
It's actually 2 now.
That's such remarkable work. I could imagine charging a committee like this with the question, okay, how could we protect the well-being of our senior citizens, in a more kind of comprehensive way? What's the kind of cutting-edge practice? It's almost like a community public health project, and I don't know enough about that myself. Of course, you have your expertise, but there's also different fields like social work, and so I could imagine a committee could take on a question like that. Is there a recommendation you could make? Is there a hire that we could make, like a part-time social worker or something? That, just something like this, that would be the kind of question I could imagine putting before a committee to ask if they could research and make a recommendation.
Rob, if I may, we have certain situations in the borough, like, there are some reporters in the borough who have struggled with their houses and becomes safety issues. It becomes both a combination of police and social work, and maybe we can find ways of helping out folks who are struggling with in ways like that. It's a combined putting our heads together to solve problems.
Absolutely. Andrew, to your great point there, and maybe we hold off on visiting Bucks County, now that you say this, Rob. Let's take the scenario where police are called, and you need police, right? Because they have the authority to enter a house, right? A social worker doesn't, I don't, right? And ambulance or police have that, are granted that discretion, right? They come in, they call 911, they leave, they save the life, that's great. Can we think then of a bridge program where we come back, Andrew, to your hard point, and say, let's hook you up with a social service that looks at, is there a fall risk in your house? Do this at Drexel. Can we connect you with New Horizons? Whatever that is, where
Right.
there's a bridge and more of a holistic public safety. You need police to be that first line of defense, because you don't know what the heck you're walking into. There are lots of other programs where then there's what, that warm handoff into support communities. It speaks to our aging in place, which is even more challenging in our old homes. Many residents don't have bathrooms on the first floor, that we can charge this committee with looking at, how they coordinate that call with our necessary first responders.
And,
Like,
make it, go ahead, Andrea.
I'm sorry. Like a continuing care. Once you have the initial crisis taken care of, you can have a continuing care kind of situation.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking to make it manageable and meaningful, we may as a committee want to decide on one question like that per year. So like this year, we would like to charge the committee with that question around aging in place and the safety concerns and what else we could do.
I love that idea.
To prevent problems from happening. And then next year, it could be more focused on traffic calming or infrastructure,
I love that idea, Rob.
Yeah. So does that sound, how does it sound? I mean, it sounds...
Well, just as an example, the one recent call that we had on January 19th on the south side of the borough, and one recent check on the well-being call that happened back on October the 8th over on the north side of the borough, when the borough proper, we have a situation where we basically have to interface with the Montgomery County Department of Aging Services, whether it could be Montgomery County Emergency Service, MCES, Mobile Crisis Unit when it comes to mental health. So the police officers do work with these agencies repeatedly every day as needed. So there are resources out there that police join up with, that we partner up with every day, and that's in addition to the Narberth Fire Company and Narberth Ambulance. We're basically the first responders as a team that go and assess the situation, and the collateral effect of notifications usually falls on the police after that, where we're notifying MCES, Mobile Crisis, Aging Services, Adult Protective Services. Some of those organizations are non-government organizations and some are government sponsored. But they're all very, very good, very, very helpful, and I can tell you very supportive of anything that we need. So again, I think we would have to take into consideration how much does the committee want to give us more than some of the resources that are already available to us in terms of some of the things like that, because they are at our fingerprints, at our disposal. So those are just some of the questions that I would have.
I think I would say not getting bogged down in any specific issue, but just to the committee idea itself. Quite bluntly, if there's minimal administrative involvement and if the mayor's on board with it as the person in charge of the police, and based upon what I've heard the chief say, I would have no objections to it.
Okay, and I think, again, it could be very focused. The outcome of this committee's work, it could be to make a recommendation that the borough hires a part-time social worker. That could be the outcome of 1 year's work.
Sure.
To work in coordination with the police. But we're obviously as a committee, we're not in a position to do that because we haven't done that research. You know all the services available to you, but there may be even kind of a next level level of coordination that's possible. So I'd like to explore it and just see if we could set something up.
Yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense just with the history of the progress we've made with the zoning, with the plastics ordinance, with many of the resolutions we've had in grading space. This is kind of the next logical step for a small borough because it's a manageable size to that point. We're in a really privileged position to look at how does community partner with police for addressing public health and safety. It's a national conversation. I think we can lead the example on how we really have an authentic partnership where we learn from one another to enhance the lived experience of residents and police. It's a natural place to have it.
Great. Okay, well, maybe I'll talk with Samantha, the mayor, or the chief, just about kind of outlining what the committee might look like, next steps.
I was going to ask, do you want me to go ahead and put this on the agenda for council on the 17th, or do you think there's more fleshing out you want to do before it gets presented to full council, or what direction we
What do you
would take.
think, Cindy?
I think maybe we can craft just a little narrative introduction, some, Andrea, to your point about the harb, perhaps maybe flush out a couple of those distinct ideal roles to
Yeah.
present for the next meeting.
Okay, yeah, so how about Cindy and I could do that and share it with you all, if there's any input. At least we could discuss it at the next meeting.
Yeah, I would just ask like anything else to the packet, if you're able to get it to me by next Friday morning, that would be ideal.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you, John. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
So I know we're over time already. We do have this question that came to us from the Infrastructure Committee about the minimum safety requirement for the dining barriers. And that's something, we're not going to be able to figure that out
Isn't
now.
that an Eric question?
But could we ask our engineer to make a recommendation, or what do you think?
Yeah, what I'm gonna do is that I can chat with Eric and then also offline me and the chief and our public works manager can have a chat about what we think would be the minimum necessary for public safety when doing outdoor dining, and can just come back to the committee with a recommendation on that. That's been vetted by staff.
Okay, great. All right, and then with the EV charging, I don't know, do you want to take a minute or do you want to just
Could
wait?
you just say just like 1 minute on that?
Yeah,
So I don't want to get into all the details on this right now because there's still a lot kind of up in the air with it. But it sounds like there might be some opportunity for us to do pole-mounted electric vehicle chargers. So myself and a representative from Flow yesterday actually drove around the borough and looked at possible locations. The key to the locations are that the utility pole has to be between the road and the sidewalk, because otherwise the charger cord would be going across the sidewalk. Ideally places that have a good residential density to them, and ideally places that don't have driveways. And then finally places where if we dedicated a couple of on-street parking spots to EV charging, it wouldn't overtly disrupt the parking flow in that area. So there were 5 or 6 locations we identified that I just wanted to share briefly with the committee before we continue developing that further. The locations we identified, one obviously would be Station Circle, depending on, I think Station Circle would be a logical place. One would be on the other side of the SEPTA station, so on Elmwood Ave. There's that whole block there. Those properties don't have driveways, and plus the SEPTA station, people park at the SEPTA station, and the utility poles there are an ideal location. At the intersection of Berry and Essex, there's again the right location of poles and no driveways. At Marion and Essex, on one side of the street the properties do have driveways, but on the other side of the street the properties do not have driveways, as well as some of the cross streets there. Some of the houses don't have driveways. And then the other location that we looked at was actually over near Ryan Christopher's, but there was a concern about how that would affect the parking in that area.
That's a tough area.
Yeah, so that's like a maybe sort of spot. And so those were what we thought were like 5 or 6 of the most ideal locations. So I wanted to see if the committee had any major yes or no, or any other locations in mind while we work through this.
Yeah, so I have a list, I could
That'd be
check with
great,
you
yeah.
after, but does the pole have to have a street light or not?
No, just a utility pole would be
Oh, okay.
fine, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because, in some cases, if it's really a dense block, it may actually be a good thing if it's in front of a house with a driveway, so that
That's true, yeah.
so that the property owner is not inconvenienced in that way, since the spot would be dedicated to EV. So,
Good point.
so I'd be happy to follow up with you and just review the list.
That'd be great, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for working on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so any public comment? I don't think so.
Yeah, they don't need members of the public there this morning.
All right, well, I think that's it for today. We'll keep going in March with some of the other items from the EAC. Okay,
Great.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.